The S-bar chart, as with all of the control charts, is similar in concept to the X-bar chart. So let's go ahead and dig right in. The first thing that we're going to do, we have our test data again, which is the emergency department to lab to back to the emergency department turnaround time values. We left off with our X-bar chart done. So now what we have to calculate is the S of the S-bar. The sigma of the S-bar is the standard deviation of the standard deviations. To calculate that, we want to find the standard deviation of all of our standard deviations. So that's essentially our daily standard deviations. We're going to calculate the standard deviation of all of them. And we get 6.390854. Now, we could have a separate line like we did with the 3 sigma to calculate it out, but we know we can just add that right in to our upper control limit. So our upper control limit now is based on, instead of the X-bar bar, the S-bar. So it's going to be the S-bar, but what we're going to do is we're going to take that S-bar and add it to 3 times our S of S-bar, or the standard deviation of the standard deviations. So you can see our formula up here. So the B12 is referring to our S-bar, and then we're going to add 3 times our standard deviation of the standard deviations. And we get 35.18532. We could also do that with a 2 sigma value if we wanted to. I'm going to cheat. And all we have to do is paste that in and then change this to a 2. And then we have 28.794446. And the way that I cheated was I selected the cell, hit F2, which allows me to actually edit the cell. I just highlighted everything in the cell, hit Control C, hit Escape because I really didn't want to change anything. Then I put it into the new cell, hit F2 again, and I pasted it in. But we don't want to do that here. So for the lower control limit, we're going to take the same formula. We're going to put it down in here so we can cheat like we did before. The difference here is, of course, with the lower control limit, we're going to subtract instead of add the 3 times the standard deviation of the standard deviations. Now, it's a negative value, and we have a note over here. If it's less than 0, we set it to 0. So we'll have to keep that in mind for the next step. Continuing on with our S-bar chart creation, we finished creating our values that we're going to need in order to develop our control chart. So let's scroll down and take a look at what we're looking at. We have our days. Again, it's the 23 days. This time what the variable of interest is our standard deviation for each day. So we can highlight all these values from our original raw data up here where we calculated the standard deviation for each day. You'll notice this is the standard deviation for day 1. And we copy that, and again, like we did with the X-bar chart, we're going to paste special and just paste the values. Now our S-bar is up here in cell B12. So we can put that in. And again, just as we did with the X-bar chart, we're going to hit F4 and make it a fixed cell reference. The upper control limit, we can hit equals sign, get our upper control limit. Again, that's fixed. So we'll hit F4. Then our lower control limit. but it's negative. So do we want to do that? Well, if it's less than 0, we set it to 0. So actually, we're going to put 0 in for our lower control limit. But all these values now are in. Those don't change. So we can just copy those. So I highlighted all three, hit Control C. Now I'm highlighting all of the cells, hitting Control V, and it copies our values all the way across the board. And creating the X or S bar chart is the same as what we did for the X bar chart. Now we have our matrix set up so that we can create our S bar chart. The same way we did our X bar chart, we're going to select all of the data in the cells or in our table from day 1 through 23. And this is just so you can see, this is the values we created based off of our S bar calculations up here. Again, we go up, we hit Insert, Scatter Plot, pick our scatter plot out. Let's drag it down to where we can manipulate it. And I'm going to run through these manipulations a little bit quicker. Of course, that means I'll probably make mistakes. So we're going to right click on the data for the upper control limit line. We're going to hit No for our markers. And for the upper line color, we're going to call it a yellow. We're going to make it a yellow. And we'll drop the size to 1.5 point. Take our S bar now, which is our center line. Again, we don't want any markers. We're going to pick a line color of the magenta-ish color, which should now show up for you down here in recent colors unless you've closed out your Excel. Take that to 1.5 points. Take our lower control limit. No markers. Line color. Solid line. We're going to pick that aqua bluish color and take it down to 1.5. Select our data. Our data now is what? It's our daily standard deviations. Here we want our markers, but we're going to change the size again. I think I picked 4 before. The marker fill is going to be a solid fill. We'll take that nice dark blue. Take that nice dark blue. There we go. Line color is going to be a solid line. And take our nice dark blue. Line style, we can take that down to 1.5 point. And what else? We're already, our standard deviation lower value is 0, so we can go ahead and keep the line on the 0 there. And this one here. Actually, let's do something a little different here. Let's take our data on the vertical axis and make it actually -1. See if that's going to make our line show up better. There we go. So there's our 0 line. Do you need to do that? Not necessarily. Go and select our chart. Oh, forgot to change the background color. Take a gray. And I guess we can take our dark lines as well. Now select our actual chart. Go to Layout, Chart Title, above the chart, Axis, we need one below, and Primary Vertical, Rotated Title. And let's move our legend. Where did our legend go? To bottom. Now we can start adding in our chart title. And we'll call it our sigma chart for CBC turnaround time. vertical axis minutes, because our standard deviation is in the same units as our data is, and our horizontal axis, didn't want to do that, is day again. And there we have it. Now that we've made our X-bar chart and our S chart, let's go ahead and take a quick look at them and see what we can interpret from the charts that we made. If we take a look at our X-bar chart, we'll see that the data looks pretty stable. There are no observations outside the 3 sigma limits, the upper and lower control limits. And the two sigma limits are 101.7 and 648. So one of them would be right around here. I'm sorry, not 648, but 64.8. So that would be down here. So it's not outside of them either. And there aren't 8 successive values that are above or below the X-bar line. And here we can see our data. Maybe I made these a little bit too small, the data markers. So there we go. Now if we look also at our S-bar chart, you can see that the data looks pretty stable here up until toward the end. We have a little bit of a change. But pretty much it's stable. In practice, as we said in the presentation, we probably want to look at our S chart first to make sure the process was stable, and then we go back to the X-bar chart. But either one of them or both of them will help us to look for any out of the ordinary data. And as I stated in our presentation, and you'll find in your handout as well, a good way to think about it is that the X-bar chart looks at variations over time or across subgroups, while the S chart looks at variation within the groups.